Welcome to Java Space. So in the previous video we talked about you just writing an interface and extending a repository interface from Spring, and then Spring will give you an implementation of it. So the question would be, how does Spring do this for you? So you declare an interface, or you can call it a repository, because obviously that interface will extend one of the Spring repositories, and let Spring provide an implementation for you at runtime. So how does it do that? So Spring, because it's an interface, in my lecture on Spring AOP, I did mention there that the kind of proxy that Spring will generate for you is dependent on whether it is creating a proxy based on a class or an interface. So in this case, it will create a JdkDynamicAopProxy. Then we also, in that series, talked about CGLib-proxy, which is a class-based proxy, which Spring AOP will create if you have a class that is independent. It doesn't extend, or it doesn't implement anything. So in this case, we have an interface, then it will create a dynamic proxy for you, and Spring uses JdkDynamicAopProxy, also known as interface proxy, and it creates a bin of type SimpleJpaRepository at runtime by default, and this bin is advised by your custom repository and other Spring classes to form that particular bin. So this is generated at startup, and the question you will have is, how do I know that this instant repository, in Spring they call them instant repository, so how do I know that it gets generated at startup? I'm just going to show you in the code. So I have this method called quiz. Then I say find by level ID. So when I have a method like this, I say find by level ID. It tells me that inside quiz entity, I have an object called level. Okay, let's go there. I'm going to show you. As you can see, I have an object called level. Inside level, I have ID. As you can see, it's here. So it's like you are projecting. We are going to talk about projections as we go on. You're actually projecting here, because you are entering into this entity, and then from this entity you have another entity which is related to it. Then you enter into it, you project into it. So now we are saying find by level ID. So now this ID must exist in level. If it's something that does not exist, it will be an error. So what I want us to do is, I'm gonna put I'm gonna put what? Okay, let me not do this. Let me do this one. Find by, let me say level name. So it says it's never used. Okay, it's fine. Let's run this code. All right. So it's not correct, because we are finding by name, but we are passing an integer. So what we need to do here, we need to say string name, or anything of type string, just like that. Then it should work now. All right. So let's say we put something that does not exist in, okay, let me just say names. Already the IDE is telling us that something is not correct. Let's try to run this class and see, observe what happens. As we can see, there is an error. It doesn't find name in level. So we are trying to project into level, but we don't find name. This is exactly what we mean by they are generated at startup. Because when you are running the application, it's doing all this for you, but it's trying to find, but it doesn't find it. So now I told you that this is a bean, actually. It's a proxy. So for us to see that, although I have put it for us here in the slide for you to see, I'm just going to show you that live. So what I'm going to do, I'll run this project in debug mode. And then what I'm going to do, I'll put a breakpoint here. Okay, let it go. What I want to do here is I want to put a breakpoint here so that we can interrogate this quiz repository field. So I'm just going to click here. All right. So I want us to check what is the type of this repository. Already we can see here it's a proxy. And if we see it's a JdkDynamicAopProxy of what type? Simple JPA repository. It's here. Simple JPA repository. So now we are just talking advanced high level AOP stuff here. We talked about them in our AOP series. We are not going to talk about them here. So as you can see, this is a simple JPA repository, as we have mentioned here. This is a proxy bean that gets generated for you. That is the implementation that Spring will give to you by default.